Hello, my name is Sydney and I come to you from the corner of a hotel room because I am currently traveling for work. I've got another list video for you and I decided to make this list about writing rules that I've broken slash bad writing advice. So, if you're a creative writer, or rather if you have any sort of endeavor, or rather if you just live in life, you've probably heard some bad advice, whether you've taken that advice and regretted it later on, or whether you took it initially with a grain of salt, or whether you just decided right then and there once you heard it that like, nah, I'm not going to take that advice. Chances are you've come across some not so good advice, and the same is true for us writers. Everybody has their 2 cents on writing, whether they've been writing for 5 minutes, 5 years, 5 decades. Everybody's got some sort of opinion. Sometimes it's advice from experience, like, here are some things that I've experienced, and let me pass on my advice to you so that way you don't make the same mistakes I made. Sometimes it's just regurgitating advice that you read online or heard from other writers. But sometimes, some bad seeds get in there. So I thought I'd talk about 5 pieces of advice today that I think suck or can suck sometimes. And some of these pieces of advice are considered rules of writing, which, like, honestly, are there rules? I don't know. Society says that there are rules, but maybe there's not, because rules are made to be broken, right? That's another thing that they say. So without further ado, let us get into it. Number 1, don't watch TV. What? Now, I can see the merit in this, okay? TV is one of those things that it's really easy to get sucked into. It's really easy to spend hours watching TV to the point that you end up not having as much time to write. However, I have gotten some really good inspiration for my stories from TV, whether it's like details that I think would be cool to incorporate or even just to try out and test the waters with, or whether it's like overall themes or things that can affect the mood and the tone of the story. At the end of the day, TV is just another creative medium, It started out as something somebody wrote, a script, and then it just happened to have actors who acted it out, and directors and casting crew members who came together to create this thing that you can watch instead of read. It's just another form of entertainment, another form of creative writing. Number 2, and this is something that I had a creative writing teacher say, and it was something to the effect of other writers in the class should make sure that their stories are edited for grammar, whereas I thought, let's edit it for content first, and then we can worry about the grammar later. So I get what my teacher was saying. It can be difficult as another person workshopping this piece of writing if you can't comprehend the piece because the grammar is really bad. On the other hand of that, it's like, don't focus too much on the grammar because you're working and tweaking and spending all this time obsessing over sentences that could ultimately get cut because maybe that scene shouldn't have been in the story in the first place. Maybe that scene, slowed down the pacing or was a tangent to the plot or was just overall irrelevant to the story. So it's definitely one of those things where you kind of need a bit of both. You kind of need to spend a certain amount of attention on your grammar, especially if you're going to show it to other writers, but at the same time, it's like, don't obsess over that too much, because the most important thing is the overall story. Like, does it make sense? Does it flow? Does each scene lead to the next? There's bigger questions like that need to be focused on before you start getting to the really nitpicky details of grammar. Number 3, write every day. This is one that I think a lot of us hear, and for most people, I think it's kind of unachievable or unrealistic. A lot of us have lives, we have jobs, we have families, we have school, we have friends, we have different things going on in our lives that we can't always devote time every single day to write, even if we really, really want to, So whoever said this is somebody who has somehow found the secret ingredient that we're all looking for. Another hour in the day. I'm just like, okay, can you make a map? Can you point me in this direction? It's like the fountain of youth or something. I think what this piece of advice maybe is trying to get at is to make time for writing, right? Again, like, you may have all these other things going on in your life, but if you want to be a writer, you got to make time for it, Maybe it's not every day, but even if you can devote time each week or something like that, you're never going to be able to spend time writing if you don't make time to write. Number 4, to research everything up front. That means if you're, writing a story that takes place in this location that you've never been, or if you're writing about a character who has a disease, you need to know everything about that disease up front, from the symptoms to the cures to how it can manifest and things like that. Sometimes these details, knowing more about the subject matter of what you're writing before you start writing it, can be really beneficial. For one, it can save you a big old headache in revisions, especially if whatever that aspect you need to research is something that occurs a lot throughout your book. However, you don't have to research everything up front. And if you're writing a scene and then you realize, oh my gosh, what's the climate like in Switzerland in January, you know? You can either make it up on the spot or you can stop your momentum to research it. And sometimes it's not worth stopping your momentum to go over to the internet and research something. One, because you can get caught up in the vortex of the internet and never get let out. You'll look up the climate of Switzerland in January and next thing you know, you're watching YouTube videos about cats jumping away from cucumbers that they're afraid of, you know? I mean, have you seen those videos? Like, what is it about cats and cucumbers? I don't know. You gotta kind of pick your battles here. Know what you need to research right now up front, and what you should probably know before you start getting into the nitty-gritty parts of writing, and know what can wait. If this one sentence is the only time in your entire story that you're gonna mention Switzerland in January, maybe it can wait. Especially if you're knee deep in this scene and you've really got a good momentum going. You don't want to you don't want to stop yourself, right? Because maybe that momentum was like the first bit of momentum you've had all week and you've been waiting for this. You don't want to stop yourself now. So that would be a good time to put in like placeholder brackets or something, like look up Switzerland January weather here, and then keep on going as if you've already found out that detail. But if your entire story takes place in the jungles of you know, Kenya or something. Does Kenya have jungles? It probably does. I don't know. I should, but I'm not going to stop to research it in the middle of filming a video. Case in point. So if your entire story takes place in the alleged jungles of Kenya, maybe you should research that beforehand. And number 5, and this is one of my favorite pieces of advice because it's so bad, write what you know. Who the heck wants to write what they know? I don't know. A lot of writers probably do, right? A lot of writers write memoirs of their life. They write about things that have happened to them in real life. They write about characters who are like people that they know, and that's all fine and dandy and great and good. I do that quite a bit in some situations as well in my stories. But one of the major reasons why I write is to learn more about things that I don't know, you know? I write about different places that I've never been and may never go. Who knows, right? I write about characters who are unlike anybody I've ever met. You know, I write about fantastical beings that don't exist, you know, so how could I possibly know them if they don't exist? It's like writing for me is an exploratory art. For one thing, the weather. Okay. My book Stormcloud, as you can probably guess by the nickname there that I've given it, has a lot to do with the weather. And so I never really truly cared about the weather until I started doing a lot of research for this story. And of course that's research that I did at different points in the draft, before, during, after, you know, I kind of picked my battles with that one. But I never would have learned so much about the weather if I hadn't sat down to write this story, because the story needed to be to a certain extent about the weather, right? But ever since then I've like become really fascinated about the weather outside of my story. I even considered double majoring in geology at some point, or even just taking a meteorology class. So of course I love this thing because of my story, right? But it's something new that I learned about. I knew nothing about the weather except for the general, oh, I'm looking out the window and it's sunny outside. I'm not, it's like 10 o'clock at night. But you know what I mean? Like, aside from just casual observations, I knew nothing about the weather. But now I know stuff about the different types of clouds and the different layers of the atmosphere, or how hail becomes different sizes and like different optical phenomenons, or even just different types of climate and like what causes them. Like, I know a lot more about this stuff because I had to do research on it for my story. So write what you know is terrible advice. Of course you can write what you know, but you shouldn't stick to writing what you know, because, and I don't want to say shouldn't, I'm not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't write about, but you shouldn't, but you don't have to limit yourself to writing what you know, because as Jon Snow said, no, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but somebody said, you know nothing, Jon Snow. Yeah, none of us do, right? And was it Socrates who said something like, I know that I know nothing, or wisdom means knowing that you know nothing, or something like that I learned in my philosophy class 2 years ago but can't quite remember. Yeah, you know, it's part of, I guess, this whole experience we call life, right? You're learning. The older you get and the more you learn about stuff, the more you realize that you don't know anything, right? You start to learn stuff, but there's so much knowledge out there. How could you possibly know enough of it? Okay, so that's my video. Those are 5 pieces of bad writing advice that I have already broken. If you guys like this type of video, give it a thumbs up. Down below, I would love to know if you guys would like to share any bad writing advice that you've heard in your day that you think is absolutely suckish, because trust me, there's a lot of writing advice out there and not a lot of it is good. A lot of it is good, but not all of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Give this video a like, hit subscribe for more writing videos to come. Hit the little bell notification icon so you can be notified whenever I do post new videos. I do post videos every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, so be there or be square. I just thought of SpongeBob. I love Patrick. I will see you guys later. Toodaloo.
Keep believing it's my turn.